Let's bring in right now Democratic Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado. He wrote and helped pass the expanded child tax credit, a program that starts delivering payments directly to families this week. We're going to get to that in a moment. Lisa Murkowski, Senator, may be a little more difficult for Republicans to beat than they think. They tried this before in 2010 with a Tea Party candidate, and she beat them as an independent write-in candidate. She's tough, isn't she?
She's incredibly tough. She's incredibly honest. I'm not sure there's anybody in this building with more integrity than Lisa Murkowski, and I think the people of Alaska know that, which is why the last time, as you said, the Tea Party tried to take her out, she was able to overcome that election, even though she wasn't even on the ballot. She did it as a write-in candidate, so I think she's got a real shot here.
So, hey, can you sort of take us behind the scenes and let our viewers know what the state of bipartisan negotiations are across a wide array of bills? Of course, we hear about the fights. We see some crazy clips from conferences. We hear ideologically driven charges from both sides. But what is happening with people like yourself and Senator Murkowski, Manchin, Romney? Talk about some of the bills that are getting passed, or at least some of the negotiations that are moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, there is good bipartisan work going on right now with the infrastructure bill that I think we're going to have the chance to vote on in the next couple of weeks. It's not, in my view, a perfect bill, but it is the product of a bipartisan negotiation that I think is constructive and helpful. I've spent the last 2 months in a room with Republicans and Democrats trying to figure out whether there's a path forward on immigration, including the DREAM Act. We meet once or twice a week with a group of senators. Lisa Murkowski's actually been part of that conversation. So there are conversations going on. I would say that I think that the big dividing line right now here is that the Republicans in Washington are unwilling to vote to repeal a single cent of the Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans, and they'll stretch to every degree to avoid doing that, and that's going to make it very hard for them, I think, in the end, to pass a large bipartisan infrastructure bill.
All right, Senator, I want to ask you about this new child tax credit. How long will it last, and how does it work?
So I ran, as you may remember, an almost completely unnoticed campaign for president on the idea that we could cut childhood poverty almost in half in this country. And Joe Biden has taken My American Family Act, which is a reform of the child tax credit in the American Rescue Plan, and passed it. And it will cut childhood poverty in this country almost in half. The way it works is it goes from $2,000 a kid to $3,000, $3,600 for kids under the age of 6. It's fully refundable, which means for the first time in the country's history, the millions of children who are our poorest children will receive it, and it will be paid out starting on July 15th on a monthly basis for the next 6 months. So parents will get, and by the way, it's 65 million children that are going to benefit from this. Almost 90% of America's kids will have this benefit until the end of the year. Right now, our fight is to make it permanent, and that's what we're trying to do. I mean, we have one of the highest childhood poverty rates in the industrialized world. The population in our country that is poorest are our children, which is a disgrace. And childhood poverty costs our country almost $1 trillion a year. So here is an opportunity, finally, for the federal government to intercede on the behalf of working families, on poor families, and make a difference in their lives. It certainly, has made me more optimistic than I have been in the last 11 years that I've been in the Senate, and I give the Biden administration huge credit for leading on this.
Hey, Senator, it's Jonathan Lemire. Good morning. Great to see you. Two questions for you. Very different topics. First, if there's any update you have on the disturbing arrests of 4 people in Denver, obviously in your home state, with a huge amount of weapons, and if there's any sense as to what the motive might be and any connection to the All-Star game, which of course is being played there this week. And then secondly, we're going to hear from President Biden tomorrow on voting rights. He's going to deliver a much anticipated speech in Philadelphia. Kind of want to get your sense as to what you think should happen in terms of potential filibuster reform and the scheduling of these 2 big voting rights bills that are in Congress, being considered in Congress at the moment.
Yeah, so Jonathan, I don't want on the arrests in Denver. I don't want to front run the investigation that's going on there. I will say that it was apparently the result of a maid who saw these weapons in a hotel room and reported them, and that's incredible. I mean, the idea that a citizen came forward like that and did her duty, I think, is really, really amazing. On the voting rights stuff, what I think should happen is we need to show up in favor of democracy. You see people in Cuba that are protesting oppression there. Democracy is being tested all over the world. The Chinese government is competing with us in a relentless way, and we need to get our act together. And Mitch McConnell's obstruction in the Senate, which is not a traditional use of the filibuster, it's not a traditional Republican approach, it's a bastardization of the Senate process, is bringing this democracy to our knees, as is the voter suppression that's going on all over the country. My state has the 2nd highest voter participation rate in the country, and the reason we have that is that we have mail-in ballots. We've got opportunities for people to drop off their ballots early. There is no fraud. If you tried to take it away tomorrow, Republicans would fight as hard as Democrats to keep it the way it is. And I think the rest of the country ought to look like that. If we believe in democracy, we ought to support the right of people to vote, just as we have in my purple state of Colorado, a 3rd Republican, a 3rd Democratic, and a 3rd Independent. And I do not, for one, do not believe that Mitch McConnell's, as I said, bastardization of the filibuster and the Senate rules should stand in the way of our ability to make sure that we protect the American people's right to show up, participate in this democracy, and to make sure that we can actually compete with totalitarian societies around the world. That is what's at stake, and I think that's why it's so important.
All right, Democratic Senator Michael Bennet of Colorado, thank you. And just for the record, I noticed your presidential campaign.
I noticed.
I wrote a column about your presidential campaign.
You did.
I predicted you were going to do very well. Nostradamus, I am not. But still, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Joe.